What's up everyone, ladies and gentlemen, it's Ava here. I hope all of you have been having a wonderful day so far, and obviously we have a little bit of a different video today because I wanted to celebrate with you guys the fact that the channel has reached 9,000 subscribers, which I am incredibly grateful for. Obviously I've had my fair share of hiatuses and inconsistencies when it came to YouTube uploads, so the fact that I can still come back and you guys are there to enjoy the videos and to keep supporting the channel, I'm incredibly thankful for, and I'm incredibly thankful that you guys are giving me an opportunity to be able to make content and to have an audience that will enjoy it. So thank you so much for reaching 9,000 subscribers on the channel. Obviously, it's not the biggest milestone. We're not celebrating a YouTube play button or a million subs or whatnot, but that's not what I'm here for. I'm not here for the raw numbers. I'm not here for, you know, fame and glory and whatever else nonsense that could be around on this platform. I'm just here to have my little community, and as long as my little community is happy, that makes me happy as well. So thank you so much for enjoying this little adventure with me. And today I wanted to discuss actually something a little bit, once again, different from what I usually do. Instead of just pure gameplay that I'd usually do on Bloodstrike or Deadlock or otherwise, I wanted to talk to you guys about my entire gaming journey, because I've had a lot of comments, especially in the last few months, asking how can I get better at video games, how can I find my ideal sense, my ideal settings and all that stuff. And instead of just writing the same response over and over again, I just want to give you guys sort of a mental map, kind of lay out to you guys how I managed to get to this point, quote unquote, and maybe have you guys take some inspiration from that and hopefully improve your feelings or your motivation when it comes to, you know, whatever video game journey you might be getting into. So without further ado, let's get started with this, and I hope you guys really enjoy this. So I'm gonna skip most of my childhood because it's honestly irrelevant to what I want to discuss, but I basically started out really young, probably at like 3 or 4 years old. I was born with a controller in my hands, quite literally. I grew up in a family of gamers, my dad being a gamer, my mom used to be more of a console gamer, now she just plays games on the phone. My brother was also a gamer, and we still are, all of us really. We have kept up this little family tradition over time. So I was born in a very game-oriented family, but I didn't really start out on RPGs or anything involving shooters really. When I started playing video games at age 3 or 4, I was really exclusively playing car games. One of the first games, or if not the first game that I've ever played, was Gran Turismo 3 for the PS2, eventually branching out into Need for Speed Most Wanted and Need for Speed Carbon. There was also Gran Turismo 4 and its bike spin-off First Trophy. Also a handful of the Burnout games, just, you know, the typical arcade driving / car games that you could find on the PS2 these days. That's what I was exclusively playing, and that's what I exclusively played until I was age 7 or 8, when I started playing more on the PS3, which had already came out when I was that age. That's when I started to get into shooter games. I was still very much playing my old PS2 games, but I started slowly but surely getting more into RPGs and shooter games in general. The first shooter game that I can remember myself playing was Call of Duty Black Ops 1, and unfortunately I didn't really have much of a multiplayer experience because I was obviously quite dreadful. I was 7 or 8 years old once again. I would pretty much only play in bot custom lobbies, bots on easy difficulty, and I would just run around the map with all the guns in the game and just kind of mess about in that way. It was pretty fun, but for actual experience, there wasn't much in the way. If I did play into real lobbies, it would mostly be in the gun game playlist, but that's about it. Eventually, I started branching out to other Call of Duty games. There was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 that we had in German version for some reason, as well as Call of Duty Black Ops 2, which I didn't really play as much as I did Black Ops 1, but it was still in the rotation from here on there. Honestly, I didn't really grind a shooter up until 2016, and we'll get into that in a little bit. I was mainly playing Little Big Planet. If you guys know that series, this is where my profile picture is from. Actually, the profile picture that you can see on my YouTube channel is my own Sackboy. It's the in-game avatar of the Little Big Planet series, for those of you that don't know. And I still adore that series to death, but that was what I was mainly playing, you know, just doing my little thing. I was quite cringe, obviously, because again, my age, but I was mainly playing that series of games and just chilling in my own corner, doing my thing. Nothing really competitive so far, really. Things started to change in 2015 when my parents gifted me the game Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare, which is a game that I had wanted for quite a while now. Unfortunately, I couldn't really play it much because we moved into a new place that year and I did not have access to internet. For the second half of that entire year, we didn't have internet. They would not set it up for our house specifically for whatever reason, even though we had called our provider multiple times saying, hey, like, nothing's happening, like, we can't get anything going. So I didn't really get to play the game much up until, I want to say, the start of 2016. But eventually, anyways, I managed to find a brand new game, which I had zero expectations for at the time, and it was actually on the PS4, and that game would be Overwatch. Now, this is the game I was just talking about earlier, which I said it was the first game that I ever grinded, because I really did grind the heck out of that game. It was easily the game that I had put most hours into in my whole entire life at that point. I think I played the game basically every single day for the following 2 years, and make no mistakes, I was dreadful at Overwatch. I was dreadful for a very long time. I want to say up until I hit the 100-hour mark, I couldn't land a single bullet on people, and I recognized that, and I was in fact so scared that it would hinder my team's performance that I literally didn't touch the competitive aspect of the game up until Season 2 dropped. But once I actually got over that fear and Season 2 released, I started playing the competitive playlist in that game, and I managed actually to place platinum initially, and eventually I worked my way all the way from solo queue to diamond, which honestly back then doesn't really mean much of anything, especially even more on console, but that made me happy because, you know, again, first shooter that I ever really grinded in my life. But eventually I kind of got tired. I really couldn't go past that diamond peak, and I would go on huge losing streaks. I kind of got tired of the game despite all the brand new updates and all the new game modes they were adding. I kind of got exhausted of the game, unfortunately, so I started to take a step back slowly but surely. Started hopping back on Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare as well, funnily enough. But yeah, Overwatch, first game I ever grinded, and even though I was pretty dismal at the game, I did some decent things here and there. There's some montages on another channel of mine that you can find on YouTube. So, yeah, I did have my fair share of moments, but it wasn't anything crazy, really. It wouldn't be until 2018 where I got into my second ever shooter game that I really grinded and still somewhat play to this day. And that would be, obviously, Fortnite. Just like Overwatch, when I started off playing in Fortnite, I was pretty bad. I think it took me over 100 solo matches before getting my first win ever. I just couldn't get a hold of how to play a battle royale. How do I move around? How do I build even? That was like the least of my concerns, but I had all of these things going against me and I could not get a handle for the life of it. But I actually streamed on this very channel one day, just like to mess about a little bit. I even titled the stream possibly the worst player of all time. And that stream happened to be the time that I got my first win ever in Fortnite. And when I tell you guys that I was dismal, you can see exactly what I'm talking about. It takes me approximately 20 seconds to build a 1x1. It was bad. It was pretty bad. But eventually, slowly but surely, it took about 3 to 4 seasons before I started getting a pretty reasonable level. It also took me about 3 or 4 seasons after Chapter 1, Season 1 to even get my first solo game over 10 kills. Oh my god, like, when I tell you guys that it was bad, it took me a while before I got a hold of Fortnite, but it eventually happened, and once I got the ball rolling, I basically became unstoppable. I still wasn't really good at building per se, but I started watching YouTube videos more and more about the game, and I was watching one creator specifically that you guys may have actually heard about, and his name was CY. Now obviously CY wasn't the best player at Fortnite, especially when you had Ninja, Tfue, Dakotas, all of these big names at the same time. So why was I watching CY at that point? Well, first of all, he was a controller player. I believe he was the most popular controller creator at the time on YouTube. I didn't really watch Twitch back then, even though I had an account. I really wasn't touching it much. It was kind of a foreign concept to me, the whole thing of live streaming. but he was one of the biggest controller creators on Fortnite, and he also had a playstyle that I really liked, and that's what I started analyzing more. You guys may not know this, but I actually watch a lot of YouTube on my off time when I'm not playing or when I'm not editing or making my own videos. I usually have someone else's video in the background, whether it be gaming, whether it be even ASMR and stuff like that, fashion, beauty, whatever. I almost always have a YouTube video running in the background, just because there's a lot of topics that interest me and that I want to learn and watch more about. But back then specifically, I really wanted to understand and learn how to get better myself. The same thing that you guys may be going through, I also had to go through as well. And what I really liked about Ali was his gameplay. He wasn't the best builder either, but his aim was almost impeccable when it came to most teamfight and everything. His crosshair rarely left the enemy, and I wanted to learn really how that was possible. And over the course of time, I started understanding it all came with his mastery of playing on controller that he got from Call of Duty, and aspects like centering, micro adjusting, sensitivity settings, all of that stuff, all of that actually played into his playstyle. And even though he could get easily outbuilt or outmaneuvered, outmovemented, whatever it may be, he always had a good shot on the enemy, and that was the kind of playstyle that I was going for myself. So I started learning from him and eventually integrated that into my gameplay, and over the course of time I felt the results of doing that more and more. To this day on Fortnite, my specialty is aiming. I'm never gonna have the best movement out of anyone. I know people have crazy grappler tech going on these days. I watch Sammy's videos these days and just wonder, like, what is he doing with that grappler, bro? Like, what is this nonsense? But I'm never gonna have the best movement in Fortnite. I'm never necessarily gonna have the best building either when I decide to play builds, but one thing I will have is that aim, and that came from just years and years of practicing things like centering, crosshair placement, tracking, micro adjusting, recoil control, and all of that stuff that played into my playstyle. I started to get really good at Fortnite, so good to the point that back in Chapter 2 Season 2, there was a little bit of an exploit to get easier lobbies in Fortnite, and that just involved playing solo squads. Even though a solo squads is really hard to pull off, especially these days in Fortnite, I decided to jump into that myself and see how well I would do, and I eventually managed to win a couple games in solo versus squads, and that just motivated me to play even more, and that's just what I did. Eventually I swapped out of console into controller on PC, and even though my PC didn't run the best, it didn't look the best either when running the game, that made me so much more comfortable because the input delay compared to console is just so much better, so I could just pop off even harder. So I played Fortnite for the next few years. That was pretty much the only game I would play. I would play some other like arcade games here and there, but compared to before, I really only exclusively played Fortnite, even more so than ever before. But that also somewhat came to an end because it was Chapter 2 back then that they had released, and if you guys remember, there were certain seasons from Chapter 2 that just lasted hundreds and hundreds of days. There's one that even lasted almost a year, if I recall correctly. I just got really bored of that, especially because of my gained experience. I would start getting into even sweatier lobbies, people that really wouldn't push and that would just play hard zones, hard rotations, just, you know, playing what I described back then as like they're in a $10,000 scrim. You would have packed in zones and stuff like that. You'd rarely get more than 10 kills a game combined with your entire team. I just got bored of that eventually myself, and that's when I stumbled onto a game on the PlayStation Store called Realm Royale. Now, Realm Royale, compared to both Overwatch and Fortnite, I didn't grind that much. It came out in 2019. The PC version had just come out a year earlier, if I'm not mistaken. And I didn't grind that much. I put a fair amount of hours in when I was not playing Fortnite. But it wasn't anything crazy, really. I just had given the game a look because I had briefly played Paladins in the past, which Realm Royale is an offshoot of. And, you know, I enjoyed the game, but it wasn't anything crazy. I was also getting to the point where, because of my weird playtime, I would mainly run into bot lobbies already with controller input only lobbies, and that kind of bored me as well. So I eventually went back to Fortnite. But I found the game once again in 2020 when, like I had described, I was getting sick and tired of Fortnite and these god-awful lobbies. But what changed when I came back to the game in 2020 is that I was no longer on controller. I had decided to give the game a go on keyboard and mouse. Again, I didn't really grind the game much on keyboard and mouse in 2020. I played a few dozens of matches here and there, but I was already feeling pretty good with myself to the point that I was already trying to do stuff like solo versus duos and stuff like that. It worked out sometimes. God knows how. I was already able to 1v2 in this game, even though my skill level on keyboard and mouse was admittedly pretty poor. But that just motivated me to play even more on keyboard and mouse. In the middle of all this, I was also playing Call of Duty Black Ops 4 and started to get a pretty good level at this game, even dropping a couple of nukes in that game, which I really didn't think I would ever be able to do, but I had really advantageous lobbies and it kind of just happened, but I really got good at Black Ops 4. So I eventually went back to Fortnite, tried to give keyboard and mouse a go here and there. And again, I was pretty dismal. I was learning a whole other input. The most keyboard and mouse games I had played before this was freaking Agario. I'm not joking with you. The game I had most experience with on keyboard and mouse at that point was Agario. Nothing like FPS related, nothing platformer, nothing. Agario, a 2D game about blobs eating blobs. That was the bulk of my keyboard and mouse experience at that point. I had no idea about sensitivity, mouse control, mouse tension, none of that stuff. I was straight buns and just trying to figure out how to get out of that rut. Fast forward to 2022, Fortnite got boring again, so I decided, screw it, I'm gonna go all in back on Realm Royale because I still had the game in the back of my mind and told myself, okay, well, that game is still pretty enjoyable. So at the midway point of 2022, I got back into Realm Royale pretty heavily, and I even started uploading daily content about the game. And I was uploading so much content, and it was actually attracting quite a big audience. But I very much had my own little niche viewership. It wasn't any of the familiar faces of the community because I was still not really hanging out on Twitch. It was really my own community that I was building on YouTube. And I actually had come back to the game at a perfect time because they had just announced a re-release of the game, completely making the game brand new with all of the mechanics, all of the features that the game had very initially when it released in 2018, reintroduced in a somewhat revamped format, and they called it Realm Royale Reforged. I had come back to the game at that moment and I had no idea up until the last month or so before the patch released. However, right around when the patch released, I also moved to Martinique, which, if you guys don't know, is in the Caribbean. So I already had a decent enough setup back then, I want to say. That all changed when I moved to Martinique. I'm gonna show you guys a picture of the setup that I was rocking when I was over there, and I'm not joking. I literally played cross-legged on my bed, mouse pad on the bed, PC on the bed, just hunched over. That's how I played for the almost year that I was there. And no, the microphone feature is not just for the picture. I was literally playing 24/7 with the mic balancing on the side of my knee the entire time. It was cooked. But that flimsy setup didn't stop me from grinding content, and in fact, I still try to upload nearly every day, even multiple times a day when there were big update days on the game. So much so to the point that I got picked up into the partnership program from Realm Royale, so I was able to do stuff like giveaways, code giveaways, playing with subs, playing with viewers, just doing fun events for the community, even taking part in some fun events. I had already tried to make an effort as well to start branching out beyond my YouTube audience, so I started streaming on Twitch pretty often, eventually meeting the familiar faces of that platform as well, where the bulk of the user base was actually, they were actually on Twitch. And I just kept going like this up until I played in my very first ever Realm Royale tournament with my good friends. I thought I had a decent level when I got into this tournament. I didn't really have any fear going. I mean, I was already dropping 20 bombs pretty regularly in the lobbies that I was playing, even when there were a decent amount of players in them. So I didn't really have any concerns going in. I didn't have like the sweatiest stack either, but you know, they were good at the game and we were pretty solid as a unit. So I figured this would be a pretty fun experience. We got dead last in the tournament with 0 kills, a whole donut kill count in that tournament. That was absolutely a wake-up call for me. I thought I was good at the game and eventually not enough for a competitive level, so I started going even harder. I started playing a lot more solo versus trios, which might sound crazy, but in that game, the TTK is so long that you can get away with doing solo trios pretty regularly, especially if you know what you're doing. I was playing almost exclusively solo trios or just trios in general with other people for the next, I want to say, 5 months or so after the tournament, up until the point that I actually got my new PC, and that was just a game changer for me, because I was actually able to do solo versus trios all the time with an even better machine. I was starting to get into my flow state, get to know the game even better than I thought was possible before. I felt unstoppable. Now, they dropped a new map update in Realm Royale, and I'm gonna skip most of what happened after, because that was basically the end of the game. They dropped this one update, and even though there were plans to add more to that, the game never got enough players again to justify adding anything else, according to the publisher, which is unfortunate. There's a lot of stories and grievances regarding that, but we're not going to get into that. But I grinded the heck out of that map for the next year and a half or so that it was available, and I got so much better at the game. So much better. One of my first games on the new map was solo versus trios, to tell you everything. That's how fearless I had. I was finally starting to have confidence in myself and starting to realize that, okay, yeah, I actually have a very good level, and I'm probably able to do tournament and competitive stuff once again. And that's exactly what I did. I entered a handful of tournaments. I even won a solo tournament, which is one of the first entries in a tournament that I had that I actually won by myself, which I was absolutely buzzing about. I also played some duo and trio tournaments, and I basically did that on loop until the very end of the game. What you guys are seeing right now is the very last tournament that ever happened on Realm Royale Reforged, and also the very last tournament that my team and I won against people who had so much more playtime than me, just so much more coordination and experience, especially in certain areas of this map. But even though my team was fairly new in terms of experience and playtime into the game, we still managed to pull through and beat some of these insane teams, and we came out with a pretty big sweep. We won about half of the games in total for that tournament. We were absolutely on fire, but the game closed the day after the tournament happened, so that was kind of a blessing and a curse, if you will, during that tournament. So around the time of the game's closure, which is February last year, February 2025, I was trying to look for options as to which game I was about to play next. And I saw one of my friends, Zipcord, who was playing a game that I thought I had already played before, but hadn't really. It had an interface that I was familiar with from playing Call of Duty. I had played a decent amount of COD Mobile before, but I wasn't really that good at the game either. I was pulling my own, but nothing crazy. The game in question that I'm referring to is, you will have guessed it, Bloodstrike. I was seeing my friend play this game, and I'm like, hold on, like, this seems chill. Like, this seems like you can just turn off your brain and just shoot people and have fun in that game still. Like, I'm in. I downloaded the game, made 2 accounts, one for Europe and one for North America servers, and I just kind of fell in love with it, because you could, like, get away with not really try-harding. I was still, like, moving like a mannequin, really, but I still had fun playing the game. I was stacking with my friends who were also from Realm Royale, and I was just getting hooked into the game. So once Realm Royale closed, I decided to go all in this game, because it kind of felt familiar, honestly. Some of the vibes that you find on Bloodstrike are some of the same vibes that I got to know when playing Realm Royale with my friends. So that game kind of felt like home, honestly. So it made sense for me to just start grinding the game heavily. So I played up until the brand new season reset for Battle Royale. I didn't hit leaderboard quite yet, unfortunately, but I was pretty darn close. And then the season reset happened, and that's when I went all into the game. I played season reset day 1. I was still pretty bad at the game. I was running a 2x scope on my Uzi. Like, still not exactly sure what I was doing, but I had confidence, I had ego. And it kind of worked out, because I placed, I think, top 150 from my first ever season reset. I thought that was amazing. I know the game didn't have like a huge PC player base or something, and that most of everyone who plays it is on mobile, but still, like, top 150 in a game that you've basically never played before, and it's not like I grinded an FPS on keyboard and mouse before that. I thought that was good. I don't know. So that motivated me even more, and that season in particular, I went absolutely crazy on the grind. I kept it going. Up until May 2025, I peaked at around top 17 or 18. I can't remember exactly, but it was in that realm in the leaderboard. I had joined Clarity's CLY division. I was queuing against a lot more pros. I was starting to copy their movement techniques and stuff like that, integrating that into my gameplay slowly but surely. And then I got banned. And then I got banned 3 times after that, which kind of pained me. I eventually found out the reason why I was getting banned. It was because my antivirus was getting pinged as a cheat. So I started disabling my antivirus with the final account that I made. And that account that I made, you guys now know as my main North America's account, aka F90. I kept it going. I came back even stronger than before. This was around June 2025 and Block Strike was just about to start, and that game mode is literally the best game mode that the game has ever had. I stand by that opinion. Block Strike was so good, and just the simple fact that this game mode was added just motivated me to go absolutely crazy with the Blood Strike grind. I was playing 8 to 9 hours a day minimum in Block Strike. I was in love with this game. So I grinded the game to absolutely hell and back. I was making my way through the leaderboards at a crazy fast rate, eventually reaching #1 on kills on the leaderboard. I had started a clan called 7 with my friends and I, as well as Jalal, Retive, and a few other people that I had queued with at one point when playing Block Strike, and I'm forever grateful that I found these people because, like, they're incredible. Eventually, I got spotted by One Tapped. He got me into Clarity and into the CY clan, which is, if you're wondering how I got that little clan tag in my YouTube name, that's how. One Tapped spotted me, saw that I was #1 on kills, and decided, you know what, let's queue together, let's make some videos together. I'm gonna help you, so a massive thank you to him as well for this opportunity. And I mean, yeah, I've just been kicking it since. Reached #1 on leaderboards for Battle Royale approximately 3 times, 2 times on North America and 1 time on Europe. Also reached #1 on Squad Fight for Asia, and I'm hoping I can get #1 on North America this coming Squad Fight rank reset. But that's pretty much my whole entire gaming history up until this point. Now, what I've learned, and this is the most important part of the video for you guys who were wondering, like, how did I get to this level? What did I learn throughout this journey when it came to playing video games and when it came to adapting to different games once my main game closed and everything? What did I learn over the course of time? #1, your setup matters a whole lot more than you think. If you're not comfortable with any aspect of your setup, if you're not comfortable with your sense, if you're not comfortable with your mouse pad, your keyboard and whatnot, you need to find something that's comfortable for you, because just mentally already, it plays a huge factor. I played, again, on a dismal setup for quite a long time, and I never really got a super good level. Again, that's the time when I got wrecked in a tournament with my friends. You think you have a good level, but it's just, you're getting limited and you don't even know it. So once you find something that you're actually comfortable with in your setup, you're going to feel already a lot more better and a lot more ready to take on the fights that you're going to take. #2, you're always, especially if you're playing competitive shooters, you will always run into people who have advantages over you. And what I mean by that is it can either be genetic, because not everyone has the same natural reaction time. Not everyone has the same kind of mouse tension or awareness or audition. Just the list goes on and on. I think you guys understand. You're always going to find into people who are, unfortunately, inherently better, right? At least on paper. And if it doesn't have anything to do with their physiology, then it has something to do with where they live, the Wi-Fi they have, the PC that they have, the frame rate that they have, the input delay, the mouse, the mouse frequency. Like, you guys get the point. You're always going to run into people who have something over you in one way or another. And what you have to do against these sorts of people is that you have to find a way to beat them, right? That sounds ridiculous on paper. Like, yeah, of course, that's the whole point. But what I mean by that is you have to find your lane. Are you a recon player? Are you someone who doesn't like to move around and is better at things like sniping and long range playing and stuff like that? Are you the pusher of the stack? Are you just going to swing everyone, don't care, and just rely exclusively on mechanics to get away? Are you the guy who's going to bring the support and just be here when your teammates go down in a team fight? You know, you have to find your spot. And once you found your spot, your little niche, so to say, you have to maximize that experience. If you're playing the long range, you're going to need to find the best sniper loadout. If you're playing the pusher mode, you're going to have to find the weapon with the best DPS and the least recoil and the least movement penalty. If you're playing the support character, you're going to need to find the best spray weapon, the character that's going to divert attention the most from the enemy team. Just tiny stuff like that, and once you get familiar with that kind of playstyle, it will play perfectly into what you're already capable of. And just like that, even though you might not have the best aim or the best movement, just because you have the better game sense and game theory, you can easily beat some of these people. That's how, over the course of the last several years, I want to say 7 to 8 years, I managed to beat people who were so much better than me, or had so much more experience than me, is because I have my own playstyle, right? I know it's not a playstyle that a lot of people are familiar with or will play themselves, but I have my own idea how to play the game, and I just play around it. In Fortnite, when I wasn't the best builder or the best aimer, I would put myself into positions where I would be able to out-aim the person, or I would be able to put damage into the enemy without them necessarily being able to shoot back, or I would put myself in positions where, even on short-range fights, I could hit the enemy and they wouldn't. Whether it's playing around peaks or going for like super long range shots with hit scan weapons, just tiny things like that that may not seem like much when you're playing games, but actually matter so much more than you think depending on your playstyle. I've implemented those over the course of the last several years that I played games, managed to carve out my own little playstyle, and I've just been adapting that game after game after game. Of course, there's variables. You know, Bloodstrike compared to Fortnite, for example, it's not third person, it's not as short of a TTK. You won't necessarily have the same weapon metas because Fortnite's changes pretty much every 2 weeks. But it's still a thing about the general idea of how you want to play. And once you have a general idea of the playstyle you want to go for, you just have to hammer that in one way or another, and it'll eventually work out for you, I promise. And lastly, and it's kind of more of a general advice, but especially with the state of gaming nowadays, it's not unlikely that you're gonna run into either people who have just played these kinds of games for the entirety of their lives, or just people who simply cheat. And that sounds kind of pretentious because that makes it sound like, oh, if you lose a fight, you can just blame it on the fact that you're new or that everyone else is cheats. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying it's a thing that's going to happen, probably more often than you might think or might want to think. But it is a thing that's going to happen if you're just getting into new games or you don't really have that much experience. That thing is bound to happen, right? And it's not something to beat yourself over. Once again, you'll just have to hammer that in. The little experience that you have, you just have to like play around that, and eventually it will work out. The process and the games that I talked about, I already didn't get good at until several hundreds hours that I put into them. And overall, there were thousands and thousands of hours of playtime on various games to even get at a certain level where I'm like, yeah, okay, I can hit shots. Thousands of hours until I even got to the level of like, okay, I can kill people and not go on a negative KD. It takes time. It takes experience, and it takes also a lot of resilience. I will agree. You will tilt a lot. You will rage a lot. Again, these things are bound to happen, but it's important that you keep somewhat of a healthy spirit in mind and also some distance. That again, you're just starting off yourself and you need to just keep going at it, bro. Keep going until it works. Obviously, it's important that you have somewhat of an idea of how to do the things that you do, and for that, I cannot recommend anything more than watching how other people play, whether it is your teammates that are just simply playing better, or even content creators online, on YouTube, Twitch, or wherever else you may get your content. You have to look at that, and you have to find the people who are most like you, who play the most like you, see what they're doing that you're not, and just try to emulate that gameplay, if that makes sense. That is a lot to take in, I do agree. If you guys have any questions at all or anything to add in any sort of way whatsoever, I would be absolutely thrilled to hear and listen and respond to you guys. But that's my own personal experience. Again, feel free to add any piece of advice that you may have. I would love to hear it. But in any case, once again, thank you so much for 9,000 subscribers. I appreciate the hell out of you guys. Thank you so much for making me able to do this pretty regularly. I'm not going to get tired of it. It's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much once again for this opportunity. And yeah, thank you so much for watching until the end. Once again, hefty freaking video. It's just 40 minutes recording. Probably going to be a lot less when I edit it, but it's still a lot of information to take in. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you all so much. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.